Ben Stiller became one of the biggest comedy stars in the world, but his career came dangerously close to falling apart over and over again. He passed on the opportunity to direct one of the biggest movies of the 20th century, nearly missed out on acting in another, and spent years being just one flop away from losing everything. Being the son of two actors, Stiller was exposed to the film industry for as long as he can remember, and it was a gift that his dad got him when he was in elementary school that made him realize what he wanted to be when he grew up.
Getting the Super 8 camera that my dad got me. I started to just film stuff when I was about 8, 9, 10 with my friends. So we'd do these little sort of like retribution stories where be like, I walk down the street and a kid like roughs me up. It just became, it was like what I loved to do. And I kind of knew, I think, since I was like 9 or 10, I was like, all right, I want to be a director. That's what I want to do.
His passion carried over into high school and got him into one of the most prestigious film schools in the US. But it didn't go how he had imagined.
I went out to LA to go be a director and an actor, went to UCLA, hated it.
After just 1 year, Ben dropped out. He found himself at real crossroads, wondering if his dream was over before it ever really began. Despite being a college dropout, he moved forward on his own, and it was an incredibly humbling experience.
I got a job working as a busboy. I stayed at home with my parents, and I started taking acting classes. I got an agent, auditioned for about 3 years, started to get callbacks. It took about 2 years to even get to that point. I just was not great at auditioning, wasn't that comfortable. After a couple of years of doing it, I finally started to get better.
But after years of struggle, he landed a part in the play House of Blue Leaves, which ended up changing the entire trajectory of his career. Because thanks to this performance, he got noticed by Hollywood and offered a role to be in a movie directed by one of the greatest directors of all time.
And everybody came to see that. And from that, a couple of directors came, and I got a small part in Empire of the Sun that Steven Spielberg was directing.
This was much more than just a cool experience. This set the roadblock for his entire career. Despite being a no-name, Spielberg treated him like one of his own.
I showed him my first short film I made when I was on that set and gave me feedback on it. And, he's always been such a huge mentor to me and someone I looked up to because he's one of my favorite filmmakers.
The following year, Ben got the opportunity to co-star alongside Brat Pack members Molly Ringwald and Andrew McCarthy in Fresh Horses. He thought this was going to be the one to launch him into A-list status, until its devastating box office run.
And they were coming off of, Breakfast Club and all these movies, and this was the Brat Pack. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to be in the Brat Pack. I'm going to be, and the movie just...
This is it. This is my moment.
The movie just tanked. And but it was literally, to this day, my favorite experience ever making a movie.
Finding himself at crossroads once again, Ben decided to take a chance on a new genre. One that he thought he would never do.
I'm not going to do comedy. I'm going to be a serious filmmaker. That actually is something that I always really wanted to do. But then I also, I had to sort of like give in to the reality that, I like comedy and it's part of, who I am.
You're pretty good at it.
And so he put Steven Spielberg's advice on his short films to good use. He made a set of comedic short films and ended up landing a gig that almost any aspiring comic could only dream of, though it didn't live up to Ben's expectations.
And then I got a chance to be on Saturday Night Live in 1988. We made an audition tape. We were doing this little comedy act. So I was sort of like exploring making short films, being in comedy. And then they hired me to be a writer. I knew very quickly that I wasn't going to do well there because I wasn't great at live performing.
You weren't at SNL very long, no?
No, I was there like 6 weeks.
He went from SNL back to the auditioning circuit, and this time he almost landed a role in yet another one of the greatest directors of all time's movies. This time it was Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas.
Henry Hill's brother in the wheelchair, Kevin Corrigan, when they're making
the pasta
dinner. That's the part that I came close to getting.
Oh my!
I had a couple of callbacks for that.
And this was a trend for him. Ben was landing a ton of auditions, but not getting cast. So he took matters into his own hands and went back into making his own short films. And this led directly to him getting his own show on MTV, The Ben Stiller Show.
And Jeff Kahn and I met in Chicago through John Cusack, and we made a short called Elvis Stories that was people who claimed they had an experience with Elvis Presley. That led to us getting an MTV opportunity because MTV was starting to do programming. And then that led to them giving us a series on MTV, which if we showed videos for half of it, we could do whatever we wanted.
This didn't go as planned either. They got canceled almost immediately, but they did something right. because despite cancellation, the writer's room won television's highest honor.
Great shit, but we were canceled after 12 episodes, and then we won a writing Emmy, the group of us, like 8 months later after we'd been off I mean, it was just a really wonderful experience.
That's just wild. How does MTV tell you that your show isn't even good enough to be on the air, and then the world tells you that you made one of the greatest television shows that year? The writer's room was full of talent that wasn't yet famous, including the producer of Superbad, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Bridesmaids, and a million other classics, Judd Apatow, who Ben met by chance.
Judd and I met in line at an Elvis Costello Unplugged concert in LA. And I thought he was really funny, but he was, like 23, I think, and I was like 26 or something.
The show would eventually get picked up by Fox, but was short-lived there as well, before being picked up briefly by Comedy Central. Even though it kept getting canceled, his show was well-loved by audiences. It didn't just win an Emmy, it was also the reason why Ben got his first directing job.
Danny DeVito and Stacey Sher and Michael Schamberg had a production company, and they had seen the Ben Stiller show, and they invited me to come talk to them, and Helen Childress, they'd been developing the script with, and Helen was writing this story about her life and her friends growing up in Houston. They said, maybe this might be something that you might want to, direct, and like, what do you think? And we had this meeting, and Helen and I hit it off.
The movie was Reality Bites. It was pretty enjoyable overall, but very raw. My overall take from it was that you can really see the framework and potential for Ben's future as a director. The movie actually did okay at the box office. $41 million off of an $11.5 million budget for a drama and a first-time director is nothing to scoff at. The next year for Ben was bizarre to say the least, because he landed a role in a children's comedy thanks to his relationship with Apatow.
And Judd Apatow was producing it. Judd and I were friends and had been working together. He said, hey, we're going to go down. Steve Brill's the director, really funny guy. We're going to go down to Asheville and do this fun, this camp comedy. You could play this like mean guy who, is mean to these kids who are overweight.
It wasn't weird because he was doing a children's movie, but because Heavyweights feels like anything but a kid's movie.
Back camp. Oh. Why do you say that? Because you're fat. Is that your dad? No. Why do you say that? Because he's fat too.
Why don't those guys just lose weight? Why don't you show them how to throw up after meals like you did?
And even Ben joined in on the laughs.
I see the future chairman of a Fortune 500 company. I see a famous rap artist.
I personally have zero issue with any of this. In fact, I think it's a good thing to teach kids a sense of humor early. I mean, you see what happens in my Gen Z React videos when you don't. But at the same time, holy shit. Can you imagine Disney making this movie in 2026? The following year was by far the biggest year of Ben's career up to this point, as he'd work on 4 movies in 1996. He starred in the indie flicks If Lucy Fell and Flirting with Disaster, along with a cameo in Happy Gilmore.
Could I trouble you for a glass of warm milk? It helps put me to sleep.
You could trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up.
But by far the biggest movie for him this year was The Cable Guy. It turns out relationships do help out, because Judd Apatow vouched for Ben to Jim Carrey and was ultimately the reason why he got to direct it.
It wasn't like that at all, because Jim was so into, I think because he and Judd knew each other really well, because Judd had written Jim's specials for him and he really trusted him. And I think Judd saying like, I think Ben would be great for this, because Jim and I didn't know each other before that, but we all sort of clicked.
This was also when Ben met Owen Wilson, though he actually didn't even want to cast him initially.
Yeah. I came in to audition for Ben on Cable Guy.
Now, we should talk about this. Is a film that Ben directed with Jim Carrey. You were knocked out by his audition, no doubt.
Not particularly. He came in, I knew he was funny and he had a certain something going on, but I wasn't totally convinced. It was also like the first, I think you hadn't really done anything. No, I hadn't done a lot of auditions, so I was like really nervous and everything.
Judd eventually ended up convincing Ben to cast him, and it'd lead to an enormous amount of collaborations between Ben and Owen down the road. The experience was surreal to Ben, though. He had looked up to Jim for years, and it felt like everything was coming together. That was until it flopped at the box office.
Like Cable Guy. Cable Guy was a great experience making it. Then it came out and it wasn't that well received at the time, but making it was really, really fun. But then afterwards, when it, didn't do well, I was like, oh gosh, like you don't even want to even think of that. Well, it was fun.
Or talk about it.
And this halted his momentum temporarily. It was a couple of years before he'd work on another movie, But he did make cameos on the TV shows Friends and The Larry Sanders Show in the meantime. He actually also did have the opportunity to direct one of the biggest dramas of the 20th century during this period, but he turned it down.
What did you pass on? And you said, oh, shit. And then you see it and you go, oh, my God.
Good Will Hunting.
Oh.
Directing Good Will Hunting.
Oh, are you serious? Oh, my God.
I got sent it by my agent at the time. The first turnoff was that these two guys were attached to it, to act in it, who wrote it. I was like, what? Come on.
Ooh.
Well, you're right. Like, who are they?
I cast my own projects.
On the bright side, if he did end up directing Good Will Hunting, you have to imagine that essentially none, if not none of his legendary comedies ever would have gotten made. But then 1998 came, and he found himself in 4 movies again, except this time, he starred in all 4. 3 were small indies. We had Zero Effect, which I don't have much of an opinion on, Permanent Midnight, which I honestly found to be difficult to watch due to its graphic depiction of heroin addiction, and then there was Your Friends and Neighbors. And oh my god, you want to talk about a mindfuck of a movie? This is listed as a comedy on Amazon, and yet this movie not only turned out to be a straight up drama, it was one of the darkest and most disturbing movies I've seen in a really long time. Alas, it was a genuinely great film. Probably the best Ben Stiller film, if I'm being honest. It also got the rare 4 out of 4 by Roger Ebert, and was also the first movie to ever be reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes. But his biggest movie this year would be career-defining, and that's There's Something About Mary.
Is that a hair gel? Great.
Yeah,
I can use
no,
some.
you don't have to. You don't.
I just ran out.
He actually thought this movie was going to be yet another flop after its slow start at the box office.
It didn't become a #1 movie until 9 weeks into the run, I believe.
Oh my God.
I don't have that exactly right, but I remember the Tom Rothman, who was the head of Fox at the time, calling me into his office 2 months after the movie came out and showing me a chart and saying, this is what's happening with this movie. And he showed me like each week, it like getting bigger and bigger in terms of he goes, usually it's the other way around.
Considering what happened with The Cable Guy and the fact that the 3 other movies he starred in that year were flops, There's Something About Mary easily could have been the nail in the coffin to his acting career if it didn't have the miraculous turnaround it had. And he doesn't take this for granted at all.
Ended up being a big hit. And I think that was when I was like, oh, wow, this is definitely like, I guess I'm doing okay.
After years of flops, cancellations, and near misses, Ben's career was finally starting to take shape in a big way. All of a sudden, he was getting opportunities left and right, starring in Mystery Men the following year, and also nearly getting the opportunity to get his next TV show titled Heat, Vision, and Jack.
Astronaut who flies too close to the sun, and so when the sun is up, his brain expands and he's the smartest man in the world. When the sun goes down, he's normal. That's Jack Black. And his best friend gets turned into a motorcycle. That's Owen Wilson.
It may sound insignificant, but the only reason why I bring up this near TV show is because this is the project where he met his wife and future frequent collaborator Christine Taylor, and in came the 2000s. Ben would become one of the biggest movie stars in the world. He started 2000 off with Keeping the Faith, Edward Norton's directorial debut, which wasn't really my kind of movie, but was good for what it was. Thanks to the success of There's Something About Mary, he also got to star in a comedy in 2000 alongside an acting icon.
Like all of a sudden, people were calling and asking if I wanted to be in movies, which was just a new experience after, not that I hadn't been, shut out, but it was, just different. And Jay said, hey, we got this movie, Meet the Parents, and you'd be you and Robert De Niro. And I said, well, me and Robert De Niro, does he want to actually do this movie? I was like, yeah, he's totally good. He wants to do it with you. I was like, what? I was really like, I had trouble believing that he actually would say yes to doing a movie with me.
And to this day, Meet the Parents remains one of the biggest comedies of the 21st century. 2001 marked the first movie of his newly formed production company, thanks to a sketch at the VH1 Fashion Awards 4 years prior.
Hi, I'm Derek Zoolander, president and model and founder and dean and CEO of the Derek Zoolander University of Modeling for Men.
Though this movie had one hell of a road to getting made.
It started out as a character that a friend of mine, Drake Sather, wrote for a bunch of little sketches for the VH1 Fashion Awards. And then we tried to figure out what the character was, and he called him Derek Zoolander, and I just started sort of doing like a weird, like kind of Marilyn Monroe voice or something.
I can turn left.
And we just did it. We thought, okay, let's do a movie of this. The studio didn't want to make it, and it took about 2 or 3 years for them to actually, and we did about maybe 10 or 15 drafts of it. Finally, they decided to make it, but sort of a little bit against their will.
The fact that There's Something About Mary and Meet the Parents grossed over $300 million probably helped get it made as well. The movie essentially broke even at the box office, most likely because it came out right after 9/11, but has since become a cult classic, and it was way better than I remember, both as an overall story and how funny it was.
Maybe we should be doing something more meaningful with our lives. Like helping people.
Derek, what people?
I don't know. People who need help. Rufus, Brent, and Mikas were like brothers to me. And when I say brother, I don't mean like an actual brother, but I mean it like the way black people use it.
He'd also do the Royal Tenenbaums that same year, teaming up with Owen Wilson yet again, and providing a rare box office win for Wes Anderson, showing Ben had quite the broad appeal. He had a pretty quiet next couple of years, but that's because he was about to act in a whopping 6 movies in 2004. There was Along Came Polly, Envy, his cameo in Anchorman, and the wildly successful sequel to Meet the Parents. But there were also 2 of my favorite movies he's ever starred in, Starsky and Hutch and Dodgeball.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody!
Starsky and Hutch was unique, because it wasn't just the 6th time he'd act alongside Owen Wilson, but because he took his stardom to the next level by not only starring in the movie, but also by becoming the executive producer. I don't think this movie is hated by any means, but it feels like no one ever talks about it, and it might just be my favorite under-the-radar comedy of all time.
It's 10 o'clock. You're late. I've been here since 8. 8 o'clock? I didn't know this place opened at 8. Well, don't sweat it, because you know what? Crime called in sick. It's going to get a late start, too.
211 in progress. Please respond.
Go for Starsky.
Hurry, Starsky. We got 2 perps holding up a gumball machine on 5th Street.
Let's go. Gumball machine?
Lethal force if necessary.
Also, who knew Ben Stiller was this smooth? Then, of course, everyone knows Dodgeball. It's yet another one of those silly comedies that actually has a shockingly strong story, and this too easily could have never gotten made at all if the pieces didn't fall perfectly into place.
Ross and Thurber wrote the script. It was his first movie. He wanted to direct it, and it was funny. It was just a great idea, and it was, executed really well. And he said, I really want you to play White Goodman and Christine, my wife, to be the girl. And Vince was the first choice to be the lead, and Vince wanted to do it, which was exciting. It ended up being the studio said, yeah, well, if you guys all do it, we'll do it.
Even though everyone who worked on it loved it, they actually had no idea it would turn into a classic.
Thought anybody would watch it, or the fact that even people remember it to this day is funny to me because it's such a ridiculous movie.
The Ocho, man. that basically started the Ocho.
At this point, it felt like everything Ben touched turned into gold. He'd shift gears, getting into children's animation with Madagascar, and of course, this grossed over $500 million. Because why not? Likewise, his next family movie, Night at the Museum, had nearly identical box office results. And this movie was especially cool for him because had he not become an actor, he said he would have studied archaeology.
I loved history. Okay. I do still love history and the idea of, unearthing the past. So I was sort of drawn to movies and TV shows about that.
But yeah, this was an absolutely insane run. It was genuinely one of the most impressive runs of this century. The following year, he starred in The Heartbreak Kid. And despite being viewed as an awful movie, it still grossed over $100 million and turned a small profit. It definitely wasn't one of his best movies, but I still enjoyed this one.
Yeah, this is your girl, Eddie. I've always said you can tell a lot about a woman by her panties.
When have you ever said that?
Then he reprised his role in the Madagascar sequel, only this one did over $600 million. But this was also the year that he wrote, directed, and starred in what I know is many of your guys' favorite comedy of all time, Tropic Thunder. This was a movie that Ben had wanted to make for 2 decades.
1987, when I was a small part in Empire of the Sun, which was a war movie, I had this idea like, all my friends are going off and doing war movies, like let's do a thing about like actors who are like in war movies and like go through the boot camp. I was going to do like as a sketch or a short film, and then I never really figured it out and started talking about it over the years, 2000 and something, like 3 or 4 to like get a script from 1987.
And how beautiful is it for things to come full circle? Steven Spielberg threw his weight behind the project, and his production company DreamWorks produced the film. This movie, of course, wasn't without controversy. but he didn't cave to the pressure.
Junior and blackface, there are other people saying there's this whole situation of the character that you play who is mentally disabled and some of the language that is used there, and your response to that is?
Well, my first response is it's a comedy, and we're really making fun of ourselves. The whole movie is about actors and actors who try to do things to be taken seriously. So in the context of the movie, I'm really comfortable that that's how it comes off. But, you know, everybody, of course, is entitled to their opinion, but, you know, when you make a movie like this, you have to kind of go with your gut, and I feel like our heart is in the right place with it.
And to his credit, nearly 20 years later, despite how much things have changed, he still held firm in his stance. I give him massive props for staying so principled.
You know, what the reaction can be out there is it's more intense, but I don't think it should stop people from doing it. And, you know, I think it's just important to kind of do what you think is funny. You know, that's just what you have to do. I think you just have to kind of keep on going for it.
The movie did decent at the box office and performed well on DVD. The epic run continued because he crushed it yet again at the box office the following year with the Night at the Museum sequel, and once more 1 year later with the third installment in the Meet the Parents series. At this point in his career, most Hollywood stars go into full chasing the paycheck mode. But Ben showed he was different, because that same year, he starred in the indie flick Greenberg, which was one bizarre movie, but also by far my favorite of the obscure comedies he did.
I know what that's like. This friend of mine, Marnie, and me, we went to this cheesy bar in Hollywood. And we just thought, let's pretend to be these slutty girls who are looking to get picked up, even though we're not. And we end up talking to these two frat guys. We ended up going back to one of their places. They got out this video camera. Marty and I, we did this kind of strip tease. We ran out of there pretty fast. We were total freaks.
Yeah, that's like the stupidest story I've ever heard. Bye.
What?
It's just so cool that despite being one of the biggest box office draws in the world, Ben still made time to act in small movies like this. This movie easily could have been a creative disaster, but Ben prevented that from happening, with Roger Ebert putting it best, saying, quote, "I never knew who Ben Stiller was born to play, but now I do. I don't mean he is Greenberg, but that he makes him a convincing person and not a caricature. It feels insane to say this, but he still hadn't even hit his absolute highest point yet." That came 2 years later with Madagascar 3, which would gross $750 million at the box office. That high must have been short-lived, though, because after spending over a decade on top of Hollywood, things would begin to falter. He suffered a massive flop with The Watch, which in hindsight is actually quite shocking. Theatrical comedies were doing quite well, and he got to star alongside A-listers in Jonah Hill and Vince Vaughn. I liked this movie, but it was a lot like The Heartbreak Kid in that it was fun, but easily forgettable. Then, the following year, he was brought back down to earth with a break-even box office run for The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and a flop in While We're Young. The third Night at the Museum was reinvigorating, though, with an impressive box office showing, and was also one of Robin Williams' final movies.
He made so many great movies and so many incredible performances and live performances, and, you know, what he did on Comic Relief, and just, you know, he just left an incredible amount of work behind.
It was also during this time that he got the devastating news that nobody wants to hear. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Very fortunately for him, though, he was able to beat it.
A diagnosis like that, everything stops, you know? All your plans, all your thoughts, my job, it's like all of it's like, wait a minute, this is something that could change everything. It was scary, definitely scary. Nothing like the feeling of relief when you get the call from the doctor, hey, the blood test came back, your PSA is 0, you're cancer-free, and you want to hold on to that feeling. For me, I think it's 11 years now.
This was when things really started to take a turn for the worse, though. The following year, he released Zoolander 2, believing it'd be a hit, and it flopped. Badly. I remember really enjoying it the first time I watched it, but I just rewatched it along with the original, and I didn't love it. But it had a couple of moments that made me laugh, at least.
In an ever-expanding universe, slowly pulling itself apart into nothingness? What use does the question, who am I, even have?
Neil, I gotta say, you're totally blowing my mind right now.
That's what I do. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
I'll call Billy Zane. Good idea.
Look, tiny phone, that is so retro. I'm gonna take a picture with my phone.
To make matters worse, He also separated from his wife at this time. There's a silver lining at least, as it was a wake-up call for him to quit drinking.
And when we separated, that was when I stopped drinking because I felt like I wanted to just, be present for whatever was going on, which was, feeling a lot of feelings. And it felt to me like I could go down a road that would not be dealing with the things I needed to deal with if I kept drinking.
All of this hit him like a brick, and understandably so. Try having your dream sequel fail, and then losing your wife of nearly 2 decades. This period led to some serious reflection.
That was a point for me where I was like stepping back and going, okay, why am I doing this? When I go through a failure, that doesn't feel great. Like it really made me ask questions of myself. Like, why am I doing this? What's important to me? Yeah. And that was great to have that clarity.
That reflection made him largely step away from comedy entirely. He's had a small part in a few here and there, but hasn't been a leading man in a decade. If you love the dumb, lighthearted 2000 style comedies, you could catch my directorial debut for free on Tubi. But it wasn't just comedy he walked away from. He's done very little acting this past decade, even though I'm sure he's still getting quite a few offers. The biggest thing he's done in recent times has obviously been Severance. And maybe this was just what he needed, because it didn't just put him back on the map creatively, it was also when he got back together with his wife.
I think we'd both done work on ourselves on some level that was important so that we could be together. And the great thing is, I recommend, if it's right to come back with somebody, because a lot of times it's not right to come back with somebody. I didn't know we were going to come back together. But now, every day, it's that acknowledgement of like, okay, this is good. I appreciate this, and it could go away. I'm going to be grateful for it, and I'm going to be present.
And to this day, they remain a couple. He's also making his return to the big screen in a big way, reprising his leading role in the Meet the Parents franchise for Focker In Law, which comes to theaters this Thanksgiving, which paves the way for him to become an A-list actor again. It's really wild in hindsight to think of just how many times his career was just one flop away from being completely derailed. It reminds me so much of Jason Biggs, who wasn't as fortunate and was never able to escape the shadows of American Pie. He even gambled on his career by turning down one of the biggest sitcoms of the century to hold out for movie roles. And when it backfired, things got really dark in his life. I take you on this insane journey here.